Welcome to MyLife Chassidus Applied, episode 62. The response to the contest has been phenomenal. Unbelievable responses, both obviously from the winners, friends, families, and so many different opportunities have been opened up as a result in educating our next generation and of course our generation in applying Chassidus. We don't have the time to go through every possible scenario and every interaction and feedback we've received, but I will share some of it. And also I have a surprise announcement to be made about this contest. So listen in, especially those people who were in the top 10, top 11. And I will also make some more notable mention, and we will begin a new segment in this series every week, taking a few essays, emphasizing and focusing on some of their key points, as well as responding to many questions that I've been receiving of how to make these essays better for next year's contest and for other opportunities. I've also want to make some comments about some questions that were asked about the judging. Well, I will tell you just right here up front that it was done in the fairest possible way. There's not even a question in my mind. And I will address that as well as we go into this episode. But before we get into that, let's start with the most important thing of all, which is the time in which we are in, and dedicating this all episodes, but especially this MyLife Essay Applied episode to the Rebbe himself, whose 113th birthday we'll be honoring this Tuesday, Aleph Nissan. It's also 100 years from the Rebbe's bar mitzvah, 113, so this would be 100 years from that. And of course the Rebbe is the key inspiration, the only inspiration and the primary inspiration for all that we're doing here. So how do we celebrate Aleph Nissan? How do we honor the Rebbe's 113th birthday in Aleph Nissan? And we'll also address, obviously, Pesach, being that Aleph Nissan, Hashgacha Pratis, always comes in the few days preparation, when they started preparing the Korban Pesach, started preparing for Pesach. So clearly it has a connection to Pesach as well, Chodesh Nissan, the time of Nisim, when we say the Nisim from Rosh Chodesh Nissan and on. Nasi Libnei Osher is Aleph Nissan, as the Rebbe emphasizes so often in many of his letters, connection to this special day. But above all, Chassidus Applied, how to apply it to our lives. So there's so much that can be said about the Rebbe and about Aleph Nissan. I thought the best thing to do is to actually speak about it from the Rebbe's own words, what a birthday is, and most importantly, the birthday of Aleph Nissan. So I'd like to just chazir something that is today is recorded and can be heard and seen, a Farbrengen of Aleph Nissan Tov Shem Mem Hey, which was televised, which just makes the words of the Rebbe even more extraordinary. The Rebbe begins the Farbrengen Aleph Nissan Tov Shem Mem Hey, which is exactly 30 years ago. 30 years ago, Aleph Nissan, and asks a question, Dvar Pella. Strange thing. Chassidus makes such a tumult about gaiva, reishes goyim amolik, about arrogance, about self-aggrandizement, and all types of other ways of pomposity, if that's a word, and arrogance and so on. So wie kommt es? Am Kleib zusammen is matriach hidden, bothering Jews to come together to honor one individual. The Rebbe was, of course, referring to himself and his birthday. And the Rebbe elaborates on it. It wasn't just a minute. Elaborates on how, especially coming together in a Chassidus Farbrengen, talking Chassidus. It seems antithetical to the entire concept of bittul and humility. And the Rebbe continues and says the following. Briefly, he says, it's obvious that we're not coming together because of an individual. We're coming together because of a movement. Chassidus Chabad. And all the Nisim from the Alter Rebbe, the Miyased of Chassidus Chabad, going to the Baal Shem Tov, Miyased of Chassidus HaKolis, were not about individuals. These were not about individuals. Actually, the Rebbe uses a very interesting lashon. I just wrote it down because he says, it's not the individuals, it's about the Teira, the Pu'ulas, the Tachlis, the Rotzen and Kavone of the Kfutze. That's what it's about. So it's something far more central. And he brings from the lashon from Chazal, I did not give you for power, el la'avdus, to serve. You're an eved. In order to have someone, in order to bring an agdus, a unity of the group, you need to have someone, an individual who represents. But it's not the honoring of the individual, it's the honoring of the tenuah, of the movement. In this case, Chabad Chassidus, the tenuah of Chassidus Chabad. And it's interesting, the word that Rebbe uses, Teira, Pu'ulas, Tachlis, Rotzen, and Kavon. I was wondering, why these five? Maybe you could say that it's connected to the 5 levels of the neshama, connected to, of course, Pu'ulas would be Nehi, Ma'aseh B'Peil. Teira is Chabad. And then you have Tachlis, Rotzen, and Kavanah. So Rotzen we know is usually Arich, Chetzenis HaKesed. Tachlis and Kavanah could perhaps be Primius HaKesed, and one of them maybe is Midas. I'm not sure. That's not Derech Agav, Derech Efsher, Yesh Lemer. But regardless, the way the Rebbe emphasized that it's not about the Yochid. But at the same time, that's what the Rebbe is. And that captures best of all what Yud Aleph Nissan is and why it's as relevant today as it was always. It's not about an individual. The individual, as the Rebbe said, the Rebbe Tzachai Mushka said, in connection to the Hey Tevis Sforim, that the Rebbe Alein belongs to Chassidim. Which means that the Rebbe, as the Rebbe wrote then in the Zettel, that the whole in of a Rebbe is Bittul Hayesh, which means it's not about him, it's the Avdus, and this Eved is representing the entire movement. And Tzibur ain't a mess, and that's why when you say Hanossi hu Hakel, Hakel hu Hanossi, those are interesting words. You're not just saying the Nossi is the leader of the group. Hanossi hu Hakel, he is the group. And this was the bottom line emphasis in Tovshin Mem Hey Yud Aleph Nissan. So when we talk about Yud Aleph Nissan this year, 113th year, 30 years from then, it's exactly the same thing we're honoring. We're not honoring just an individual, where some people would say, well, I don't see this individual, where is he, etc., etc. And you're honoring what you honored then. The Rebbe as a Rebbe of Chassidim, as a Rebbe of the Welt, as the Rebbe of Klal Yisrael, as a Rebbe of the entire world, the Tnu of Chassidus Chabad. So how do we honor it? We honor it by perpetuating what the Rebbe teaches, the Rebbe's life, which is again not a life of a yochid, it's a life of a movement, and a movement that represents your futza meinesecha chutza, and that is what we honor. So the Rebbe's birthday in Tovshin Yud was elevated to become a birthday of Klal Yisrael, not just a birthday of a yochid. That is the bottom line message. The Rebbe, of course, also brings there the famous, very rare the Rebbe told. The Rebbe said the story that we gehört in Cheder about a Godel Amiti. The Rebbe said a Godel Yisrael Amiti, who happened to became as Gufei in his size. He was a short man, physically short, and he was asked, he's a short man. So he said the famous answer he gave, and the Rebbe made it famous, that the mensch is of sheklein, but the benkel is grace. The same idea. Starting from Moshe Rabbeinu, it was never about the individual, his size, his personality. The benkel is grace. Versus the benkel is the Nossi B'Yisrael, a Nossi, a Neshama Klolis. That's the benkel, and that's what he represents. And thus, it turns the whole day into a far different type of an experience. I'll also share a personal story, which is not so known, maybe not known at all. In Tovshin Mem Beis, the Rebbe turned 80 Yud Aleph Nissan. So that's an interesting anecdote, interesting episode. So a few months before that, I believe it was around Cheshvan, maybe Kislev, Chanukah time, we wrote into the Rebbe, we knew Shnas HaShmeinim was coming, Shmeinim Shana. In Begvura Shmeinim Shana was a significant date. So we wrote to the Rebbe that we were thinking of putting out a kavitz of all the Maimorim of Yud Aleph Nissan, the Rebbe said, starting from Tovshin Yud Beis, and then Tovshin Chav Beis, and then the two Maimorim, and then Tovshin Lamed Aleph, and on. The Rebbe said Maimorim every year. To put it out in a booklet, all the Rebbe's Maimorim. The Rebbe answered us, and said that there's no Ein Azman Gromen Lahagiyam, since there's no time to edit them. Yatziu suggests something that will not require my Hagah, my editing, which was quite a schus. The Rebbe is asking us to suggest something for Yud Aleph Nissan. We didn't expect that. We expected the Rebbe to say yes, no, whatever it may be. The Rebbe, so we racked our brains, we put our brains together, we started talking to people. I called all kinds I got eitzes from everybody. And the consensus was, based on many different ideas, is to put out a Choshev album. That would be, the first would be Shar HaTeira, a chelik of Teira. Teira connected to Shmeinim Shana, Api Kabbalah, Chassidus, from Teira's Levi Yitzchak, other places, and about Yom Haledes, and the Kapitel Tilim, of course, Yal Eir, on Kapitel Pei Aleph, and the Tzemach Tzadik's Rishimis on Tilim. And the chelik Sheni would be Shar I forgot what we called it, Shar HaMaisa maybe. And that would be focusing on the Rebbe's activities, the Rebbe's accomplishments in the world and so on. Shar HaTeira, Shar HaMaisa. We sent in the zettel, I signed it personally, and the Rebbe crossed out the Shar HaMaisa and said, Ach v'rak kevitz shel Teira. It was very clear, only Teira, nothing else. And the Rebbe added some things that we should add to the kevitz besides what we wrote. And then on the bottom, right under my name, I remember the Rebbe wrote, Ve'ed ve'iker. And here you see how Asus Latata brings Asus Leil V'Eid V'Iker, and he wrote a whole maybe 25, 30 lines saying the suggestion of that for Yiralf Nissan to publish a special Tanya, Hitzah Chadosha, Hitzah Miyuchedes, where it would have all the sharbletlach in the back of the Tanya. The Rebbe went to every detail, the color of the color of the cover, the Tzvei Bendlach the Rebbe wrote, and all the details, the size and so on. No one knew at the time the Rebbe was going to be giving it out in Alf Nissan of the Farbrengen, but that's what the Rebbe wrote. So it's a particular schus to be able to say that the Rebbe wrote that. You can move in a poshet. The Rebbe doesn't need us for our eitzes, but he did say Yatziyu, so we suggested, and from then on started coming out every year, Kevitz Yiralf Nissan. Sometimes the Rebbe was Magia, parts of it, and the different Rishimis and Tilim, and so on. But the Eid V'Iker was the main thing, that Tanya was published with a Sharbletlach, with all the Sharbletlach. At the time, Mivtza Tanya did not yet, that was a Mem Daled, where the Rebbe came out that the Tanya should be printed in every city. This was still Mem Beis, so the Tfusim were not as many as we have today. But nevertheless, it was quite a substantial amount. And the Rebbe stood up that night after the Farbrengen Yiralf Nissan and gave out Tanyas till the wee hours in the morning, to the point that people were waking up and they came to get the Tanya. So this time the Chvevusa Demilsa Yiralf Nissan. But again, most people by birthdays, they receive gifts. And the Rebbe on his birthday gave gifts. He gave the gift of himself to us. He gave us a Tanya. Ach v'rak teira. So what better way to honor Yiralf Nissan than this? One more thing with Mem Beis. One of the sikhs, I think it was the Shabbos before Yiralf Nissan, the Rebbe spoke about Neshek, and was speaking in response to people who have tinus, that the MyLife Essay b'Yodenu, it's a Chodesh Osir Min HaTeira, which means that people didn't light, little girls didn't light candles, which of course some Kehillas absolutely did, but their taina was, how can we start a new custom? So the Rebbe, of course, in his inimitable way explained that your grandmothers also didn't read newspapers, and they didn't do other things. So cheshach has added no one's problem. Here we want to add light to counter that cheshach. So in other words, it's to counter it. The Rebbe spoke pretty sharp words. I prepared that part of the sikha as a mesichas, like a section of the sikha for Hagah, and sent it into the Rebbe. Now, Derech Klal Yiralf Nissan was a quiet day, like he says in Hayem Yem, a day of Hisbeididus, a day of introspection. And the Rebbe, besides the Farbrengen, was mostly a day where most answers didn't come out that much, if at all. It was a very quiet day, but that morning, Sunday morning, I think Yiralf Nissan was Sunday, if I recall. If I'm wrong, I stand corrected. The Rebbe gave out the Sikha, and with a sharp note on the side, that Loi Kol Dov, not everything that's spoken at a Farbrengen Shabbos Kodesh has to be published. And the Even HaBechen, to know what should be published, is what reaction will the reader have. How many people are going to start lighting Shabbos candles? They hear the sharp words that the Rebbe said. And I took a lesson from that, not just the Rebbe's answer, but on Yiralf Nissan, Tovshem and Beis, Nasa Shmeinim, a lesson again that Yiralf Nissan is about learning the Rebbe's inyonim, celebrating the Tnu of Chassidus Chabad. It's not just a yochid, as the Rebbe made it clear. And above all, the Rebbe's approach, his methodology. And what is that methodology? The methodology, bottom line, are the kelim. Chassidus, it says, the sheirish ha-kelim is higher than the sheirish ha'er. It means, Talmidei Yesem Mekulam. It's how the recipient receives it. All the kavanas can be beautiful when you're mamshech eir, but until the recipient receives it properly in a tailored way that he can do something with te'elis and benefit, and that perpetuates and is also sustainable, you have not achieved the goal. That's essentially what the Rebbe was saying. So the lessons are clear. It's a day to be mekasher ourselves to the Rebbe and all his pu'ulis and all his teira and all his activities. He says the teira, the pu'ulis, the tachlis, the rotzen and kavona, in even stronger ways than up till now, because Mailim B'Kedish, even though it's 30 years from Memhei and 20 years from Gimel Tammuz, etc., etc. So that's Yiralf Nissan. Now Yiralf Nissan always, Hashgacha Pratis, leads into Pesach. It's not a Pella, because Pesach is the inyan of a Nasi, Moshe Rabbeinu, Geil Rishon hu Geil Achrin, Chedesh Nissan. We talked about Nisias, and it's the Rosh Hashanah of Ma'aseh Nisim, as the Rebbe would always speak about. Yud Aleph. Yud Aleph Nissan is what? Is the Hamshacha of Yud in Aleph, which means that it's Yud Aleph. Yud is Esesphiris Kadeshis, Shtalshalus. Yud Aleph is L'mayla Misreder Shtalshalus, to the point that it also penetrates and permeates even the Yud Aleph Samamoni Akteris, even L'umazeh. So Yud Aleph is more than just Ishtalshalus, it's L'mayla Mishtalshalus and Ishtalshalus, which is the essence of Pesach. Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah for Darkei Hanhogas HaTeva. which is the regular order. Nissan is Mamayla Lamata, Nissan, and that's the theme is Lamayla Mederach HaTeva. But not just Lamayla, but to bring it into Teva. To bring the Yud Aleph into the Yud. As the Rebbe so often talked about Tovshin Yud, Yud Shvat, Tovshin Yud Aleph Shvat, saying Chov Beis Shvat as well. The Rebbe Tzachai Mushka is double Yud Aleph. So besides the Ramozim of it, what it really comes to explain to us is the Rebbe's mission, as he made it clear in the first Maimer, Deir Ashvi, is to be Mamshech HaLakush Shalamayla Miseder Ishtalsh. It's Istalik Yikara B'Kudshe B'Richu B'Kula Alma. Istalik, Save of Kalaman into Mamala. In Lashon HaChassidus, Save of Mamala, which really means the transcendent into the immanent. That in an internalized, integrated way, we should be able to experience that which is beyond us. That's the goal of Yud Aleph Nissan, which is essentially the theme of Pesach. So the theme goes right there together. In that spirit, I'd like to say a few words about Pesach. The questions that are asked, and I'll read a few questions. First of all, let me refer you to episode 12 and 13 last year, where I spoke about Shalom Bayis on Pesach, and in episode 12, and Pesach 13, Pesach Chumras, and I also discussed some of the Seder. There's so much to say about the Seder, so many things we have from the Rebbe. The Rebbe's Haggadah, of course, is the work, one of the primary first works that the Rebbe, maybe the only real complete work that the Rebbe did on a entire Sefer that was final, is the Haggadah Shal Pesach, published in Tavshin Vav, 1946, and they have all the Haggadahs of the Rebbe, the Tavshin Chav Gimel, which was 150 years from the Alter Rebbe's Yortzeit. The Rebbe then republished the Haggadah, and many Haggadahs that he added from the Alter Rebbe. So let me share a few things about in answering the following question. The Seder for many of us has become a tedious mechanical experience. At best, it is a nostalgic time. Families gather together, the house is spanking clean, everyone dressed in their finest, children ask questions, everyone's enthusiastic. But is there more to it? Can the Seder actually help free us from whatever Mitzrayim we are trapped in? Mitzrayim as in Mitzarim V'Gvulim, which is all constraints and limitations. It's a long night and there's a lot of material to cover. How can I meet the halachic requirements while addressing my diverse family and guests, different in age and experience? Why is matzah called food of faith and food of healing? And what's the story behind the bitter herbs? So let's talk a bit about the Seder. The truth is we need a lot more time than just a few minutes, because the Seder itself, as the Rebbe Rashab said, Einspannen, the Ferd, which means the Seder is a journey. And it's a journey, it's a mosaic, a blueprint for freedom on all levels, psychological, emotional, and spiritual. And therefore, it's an elaborate system, a 15-step program, if you wish, which then also has to deal with matzah, there's the herbs, and there's the wine. Besides the 15 steps, there's all the different, number 4 is very prominent, the 4 questions, the 4 children, the 4 cups, etc. And so there's so much one can cover. On our website, meaningfullife.com, if you do a search, you're going to find a pretty comprehensive array of material that can help make us say the meaningful. But I will say just a few brief words. That may help everybody. First of all, let's make it very clear here. The whole point of a Seder, like anything, especially Chassidus, applied Chassidus, is to make it come alive. To do things by rote and mechanically, even if it's nice and pleasant and comfortable, is not the kavanah. A Seder is meant to be Yetzias Mitzrayim, Cherus, Ma'avdus l'Cherus. Avdus l'Cherus means freedom. Freedom does not just mean a word, it means a behavior. So Pesach is meant to be transformative and actually lead us into a freer place. Now, today, bondage and slavery is not in the physical sense. We're not in a prison physically. We're not under the domain and the dominance of any nation. Yes, we live in countries, but they're free countries. We are not being oppressed, expelled, and thank God, and not being persecuted. However, today's type of Mitzrayim, today's Avdus, is a far deeper one. As the Rebbe says in the Sichos in Tavshin Chav Zayin, Chav Ches, following the 6-day war, that there's a thing called, and that the Kabbalas Nidchei Yisrael, so it talks there about Medochim be'eretz Mitzrayim and Evdim be'eretz Ashur. That Mashiach will gather the Yitaka b'Shefer Gadol, the voice of the Shefer, will be'eretz Shuvah, and gather the Jews that are Nedochim, which means like pushed away in Mitzrayim, and Evdim be'eretz Ashur, lost in the land of Asher. The Rebbe says, what's the difference? Mitzrayim is the Nisayon of Anias, Mitzrayim Meitzar, which was for a big part of Jewish history, that was the case. There it's Nedochim. Evdim, which is far worse than nidachim, means lost. Where do you get lost in Eretz Ashur? Ashur from the word oisher, not with an ayin, with an aleph. Prosperity, success. Vayishman Yeshurin Vayivot, which is a far deeper goal, because there you can get fazunken, evdim, lost, completely absorbed in material success. So the goal is today, in some ways, is far harder than the goal that was back then. Today's goal is complacency. It's internal. It's not an enemy. As a matter of fact, when they were outside enemies, internally Jews were far stronger because they had something to fight for. Kashayana Esam, as they were oppressed, that's how Ken Yirba v'Chen Yifrit, that's how they flourished and thrived. Today the enemy is, God forbid, like a cancer that eats away at people's passion. The passion is directed toward money, toward material success, toward other things I don't want to mention. And the passion and Yiddishkeit becomes stale and stagnant, mechanical, robotic, herd mentality. So Pesach today is to free us from the Ivdim Be'eretz Ashur, which is to take a night, the first night of Seder, the second night of Seder, and use it as an opportunity, as tools, to free ourselves. So the first thing is you must bring it to the table and bring up, especially Chassidus Seder, why are we here? We're not just here to do the same thing we did last year, raib the morer, fill up the cups of wine, eat the matzah, haseb, and all that. We all know the mechanics. You don't need me for that. There's a Shulchan Aruch, we all have our customs, etc. What we need to focus on and start from the beginning, and with our children, who are the center of the whole Seder. Remember, Haggadah. Why is Haggadah called Haggadah? V'Haggadah Tolav Bincha. It's all about telling the story. Ki Yisholcha Bincha. It's all about the question and answer. It's all She'el Meshav, a dialogue. So you could do the dialogue mechanically as well. You can say, Ma'anishtana, 4 questions, and then you go right into Avodah Me'inu, and the story and the routine begins. Or you can use the opportunity and say the same things and say, you know what, let's do this a little different this year. Let's focus, what is avdus in our life today? Everyone should identify something that is a trap, psychological, emotional, something you want to get out of. Interesting what the response would be if people hear that. And that's what we'll focus on. And educating children from a young age that Pesach is meant to be relevant, applying it to our lives. And there's a lot of material in Chassidus to help us do that. But let's just begin with that. Pesach's theme, matzah, which is humility, lechem eini. You don't allow it to rise, the opposite of ego, chometz, which is like the inflated ego. Same letters, ches mem tzadik, mem tzadik hey. The only difference is the mem tzadik is the same, the ches and hey look the same, except the hey has that little space, that space of humility, the pause of humility, that you don't just jump. Again, I'm being brief, but just some pointers. At the same time, the Rebbe explains, Pesach is not just about humility. You drink wine. Wine is the drink of malachim, of kings. Bar chava. So bittul is not meant to be impoverishing someone. It's meant that when you free yourself of your ego, you're able to open yourself to the most expansive. So we have both. We're like malachim and sitting behaseba. We drink and sit and pravah the seder like kings, free people. But we also know that freedom, true freedom, is humility. Humility is the key to pierce the Eivdim Be'eretz Asher, the complacency, the comfort zone, the apathy, so much connected to a person's comfortable, prosperous place. And prosperity doesn't always mean necessarily not everyone's financially prosperous, but we live in times where it's quite easy to be Jewish, quite easy to find kosher food, even kosher Pesach food. So all this essentially comes down to an attitude of introducing elements, bittul, morer, bittul, harchova, as I just said, the right way, and morer. The Rebbe says morer, why is the morer in the middle of the kaira? Interesting question. Morer is bitter. Gvura, it should be the left. It's teferes, because he says morer brings from the kutetera, is not about bitterness. It's about empathy. Why would we be sitting in now and eating morer to remember that the Jews suffered 3,327 years ago? And is it really comparable? A little morer that makes you cough or makes you lose your breath is comparable to that suffering? The key is empathy. We empathize with someone that suffers. So it's the midas harachamim and the tkava mitzoy, that's where the morer is. Teaching people empathy, another product of bittul. I'll go on and on, but these are central points that if you apply yourself, and even before the Seder, talk to your children, and not just to go through the rote. Yes, it'll be beautiful to hear our children ask the questions, but to actually apply it to personal life. Find something that's avdus, something, what is your meitzer ugvul? in your own personal way. It doesn't mean you have to necessarily speak about it, but you can think about it. As when you say the Haggadah, the different elements of it, think about it. And it's not just talking to your children, it's also talking to your own child within. Every aspect of the Haggadah can be made relevant and personal, but you have to apply yourself to that, and you have to prepare yourself. Nothing comes automatic. I can elaborate, but these are, I think, some points. I want to say one final thing, because next week there will not be a MyLife Chassidus Applied episode because of Yom Tov. I want to say something about Sudas Mashiach as well, which will be Achar Pesach. Sudas Mashiach, of course, is a Suda that Baal Shem Tov instituted. But I want to share one thing that the Rebbe would say almost every year, Sudas Mashiach, is that when Sudas Mashiach means Mashiach becomes a Suda. Mashiach is something we're supposed to think about all the time. And Animamin. So what's Pesach different? Achar Pesach. That it's a Suda, a physical Suda that you wash with matzahs. Then the Rebbe Rashab ben Tofrei Samavov instituted the 4 cups of wine. And the Rebbe says, the Rebbe Marash says that matzah, when you est matzah, est min elikus. You could say 1 second, every food is elikus. No, every food is not elikus, because every food, the elikus is enclosed and concealed in veils and cloaks and so on. So there's a nitzat zeliki. The spark of the divine spark. But matzah, because it's bittul, est min bittul, yet es elikus. And on Achar Pesach, it's a Mashiach dike essen. So it's a day where the Suda is connected to making Mashiach a Gashmi's dike thing, living with it in a very physical way, not just as a concept, as a matter of faith, as a matter of a belief or idealism, but actually living. So it's one day in the year where we're given an opportunity to live Mashiach dik more than any other day of the year, and to make it manifest in a very real way. And this too needs to be explained to children and give opportunities. What will it look like, the world, when Mashiach comes? What will a world look like when you'll be able to recognize? You'll be able to see within the glove, the hand inside the glove. You'll be able to see within every creature, you'll be able to see the forces that bring it to life. Envision it. Talk about it. There'll be birds in the sky, there'll be earth, there'll be everything we have. Goyla, Geula, the same words except one thing. The Aleph, Alufa Shalelam, will be able to recognize the divine. So you eat the meal, the same meal like you eat other times, but now you're eating a Mashiach dika meal. So you're able to be in Gashmis to see Mashiach. And that's the ultimate message of Sudas Mashiach. Okay. With that said, let's move on to other topics. As I said again, I refer you to my site, meaningfullife.com, where there's more information on all of this, including also on Sfiras HaEmer, the book that I've written, our famous book called The Spiritual Guide to Counting the Emer, which begins, of course, the second night of Pesach. And it's personal application. It's one of the first works I did on that type of level, together with the book Torah Meaningful Life. Okay. Let's go over to the MyLife Essay contest, because we're on halfway through this episode, and let me share a few things. First, let me begin with a surprise announcement. The excitement that it generated, I can't even begin to describe, as I mentioned before. But one of the things that it did was, excitement was that in addition to the prizes that we have already awarded, we haven't actually sent them, but we've already announced them last week, which was the first $10,000 prize to the first prize winner, who was Arya Gurwitz, and who wrote on getting past depression by getting past yourself. The second prize winner was Rabbi Grosbaum, Yossi Grosbaum, Chabad of Folsom, about failure key to success. And I shall try to sum up some of these ideas in a few minutes. And then the third place was tied for $500 gift certificate between Rivka Johnson, who wrote about the Chassidic solution to overeating, and Mina Gordon, who wrote about Ahavas Yisroel. So here's the additional announcement, that the top 10 winners will now receive, all of them, in addition to these, the rest of the winners, the rest of the finalists, I should say, will receive $500 each, given by an anonymous donor, as a result of all the excitement and honoring all the work that everybody has put into this. So the names that I'll announce those names again, though I announced them again last week. The people. So since spot number 3 was tied, so we have 4 people who have won already their prizes. Spot number 3 will get an additional $500 as well. So the $10,000 award stands, the $3,600 stands. The third prize winners, Minna Gordon and Rivka Johnson, will receive $1,000 now instead of $500, and then the rest of them, and the finalists, and I'll mention them right now by name, are Judith Kasowitz, Michal Morgenstern, Shifi Goldfarb. I should mention that one is written in Hebrew. Chelsea Mika Shar, Yitzchak Winner, Yaakov Deutsch, also written in Hebrew, and Mendel Rubin will all receive from us $500, additional to what we've announced till now, to the other prizes. Okay, so I hope everybody is enthused by that, and we're going to try to send all these awards out before Pesach, but we apologize if we don't accomplish all of that, but we'll definitely, if we haven't yet been in touch with you, we will be in touch with you for details and how to present the award and so on and so forth. So congratulations to all of you, and may I be able to continuously give more surprise announcements of this sort. I want to also make some honorable mention of a few other essays that were not the finalists, but they were close to the finalists. Many were extremely close based on the scores, and so I want to mention a few of them. Let me get to my order. Chani Wilhelm, who wrote on affecting change, age 32, from Milford, Connecticut. Pinchas Mammon in Rishon LeZion, he wrote on the recession, according to Chassidus. That's a Hebrew one. Actually, the next four are all Hebrew. Avram Lichter, Reish Kel in Beitar, Israel, age 27, wrote on addiction, psychological addiction, again in Hebrew. Noam Shapiro from Gush Etzion in Israel, Merkez Apilas, he works in the school there. He wrote on the way we should react to our own thoughts and so on. Yoel Friedman, self-employed, Kfar Chabad, Israel, age 43. Oh, I should mention that Noam Shapiro is age 41. Yoel Friedman, age 43, wrote on resignation and hopelessness. And finally, for special mention, Yosef Malkin, that's an English one, a psychotherapist in Beitar, Israel, age 43, wrote on anxiety and Chassidus. These are honorable mentions of the next level of winners. As I said, there were 530 essays, many. I would say all of them are winners, but many were excellent and in different ways. And I will talk a little about that right now by summing up some of the essays that we've already posted. We'll be posting a new essay every week. If you would like to see these essays, please subscribe to our newsletter at meaningfullife.com. You'll see the weekly newsletter. You'll see right on the home page, you'll see the contest winners, and just go there to subscribe. And we will be sending out every week another essay, and hopefully just publish as many as we can and do that in an organized fashion. And we're exploring other ways to publish them and other ways to publicize them. All ideas, obviously, are welcome. And I'm going to be going over in this segment every week, take a few essays, and just briefly mention what their theme, because this is what Chassidus Applied is about, as well as give pointers. Many of you have asked for pointers, for direction. I must say that the approach has been extremely Chassidish and noble. Many people, even though they didn't win, commended us for this entire effort. I can't say everybody felt that way, but most did. And I even heard from one person that the family got together, though they were in the top 10 finalists, top 11 finalists, and the family got together and actually gave them a cash award, the family itself, which I found to be extremely beautiful, because they deserve it. A winner in a contest, there are guidelines, and you ultimately can't have everybody winning. But as I said, somebody that family doing that, I think, is an extremely commendable thing, and I want to acknowledge that as well. Now, to get to some of the actual essays, so the four winning essays, which start with number one, was by Aryeh Gorowitz, the 22-year-old young man. So he wrote about getting past depression by getting past yourself. Obviously, I'm not going to read it all. You can read it online. It's posted. But I just want to point out some of the things that he said, just a few key pointers. He basically based it all on a Maimer Chassidus from the Mittler Rebbe, V'yasfu anovim b'havaya simcha. It's a famous Maimer, probably published. The Rebbe many times quoted it. And essentially it talks about the key to dealing with atzvos, depression, and achieving simcha is through anovim, is through being humble. And he did a very fine job and in covering all the different guidelines of the contest. And that's, I think, a critical component. When you have a contest, it's not just about which paper is the nicest one, the one that touches you most. There were papers probably that were more touching than this one. And I don't mean this in any way to in any way criticize this. But what he did was took all the guidelines and, based on the judge's judgment, covered them all in the best possible way, better than others. That's really what it comes down to. So there are many factors that were considered, and one, of course, was taking a mimer, explaining that mimer, applying it in a way that anybody who reads it can be applied. People ask me the question, a number of people, is it only about tshuva, someone that went to school? It's not correct at all. It's nothing to do with it. There were papers that that are not necessarily the best written papers. It was not measured on grammar. It wasn't measured on how well it was written. It was measured, again, on one and most important, the relevance of a Maimer Chassidus, true to the original, but relevant to anyone that can read it. And I have no doubt that everybody's capable of doing that. It's true that this has perhaps not been the focus as much as it should have been in our communities, in our schools, but now is the time. So again, I'm not in any way knocking any paper. I'm just saying, taking all that in consideration. I found it surprising that some people actually wrote great stuff, but they didn't even bother to go back to the guidelines and just follow them. You know, you finish the paper, go back with a friend and say, did I fulfill all those guidelines? Some people, had they just done 2-3 more things, would have gotten a far higher score. And this is not technicalities. It's about fulfilling a guideline that everybody, to be fair, everybody read the same guidelines. So it was all judged in the same way, in that sense. His basic point is about the way expressing how humility. But you see, the key was not just translating the mimer, the key was to apply it. The key was to put it into your own words that can be explained to somebody. Which is why it emphasized again and again that it's important that you test it with someone. Don't just write an essay, show it to someone and say, what do you think? And just don't show it to someone who's just going to pat you on the back and say, great. As one editor once told me in the publishing world, show it to someone who's going to be brutal, who'll challenge it. Show it to someone secular and say, does this speak to you? And if it doesn't, go back and don't be lazy and rewrite it or edit it, etc., etc. What Aryeh did here was a very good job in taking the mimer, sticking to the original, and applying it by giving examples of what exactly means hargoshes atzmai, which means a person who's self-consumed, or as he put it, thickness of spirit. Translated words that were there. You could see that he struggled with it. You could see that he digested it and gave it back to us in a language that was internalized. Now, many essays did the same, but in this case, he did it with this theme, a theme that can be applied by people. I've already heard from a few people who've actually used some of these ideas, and of course took guidelines of how one can actually apply. Get yourself out of the way is the key to freeing yourself up from atzvus, which seems counterintuitive. You think, you know what, if I'm depressed, what does it mean I shouldn't think about myself? That's what depression is about. It makes you think how down you are. But that's precisely the kavanah that Chassidus teaches us, the ways and methods of how to focus on something else. So a simple practical thing that comes out of this is that when you're depressed, that's the first time you should be focusing not on yourself. Go do something to help somebody. Go do something on a shlichus. Go do something that has mission-oriented, service-oriented. And that alone weakens the hold of depression, which is so much fed by and fueled by a person's self-absorption. So this was the theme of one of the essays, the winning essay. Again, read it. I would suggest you read it. The second essay that won the second praise was by Rabbi Grosbaum from Folsom, California. And he based his on a ha'ara, actually, from the Rebbe, that the Rebbe wrote when his brother, Yisroel Aryeh, passed away in Tofshin Beis. It's printed in the Kutei Sichos and elsewhere in the Rishimis, where it talks about how every yerida in life is really a part of an aliyah. So his title was Failure, the Key to Success. And here too, he took a very basic concept that many people know, Yeridat Seder Aliyah, and described and explained, based on the Rebbe's ha'ara, a very interesting ha'ara. Where is it printed? I'm just looking here. Where exactly it's printed? Come to me, volume 3, page 976, footnote 19. And discusses failure in life. Now, we all deal with failure, just like we all deal with depression at times or being down. And how do you look at failure? And it demonstrated the Chassidic revolutionary approach that failure is always part of a higher aliyah. And he explains also, so then why do we need to fail? Because failure does certain things that help us get to a greater place. And here he took this theme and showed us how we can apply it to ourselves in the concept of yesh aini yesh of Chassidus. and how through failure you can jump to levels that are far greater than you would ever have jumped if you were just going through incremental growth, step by step by step. The concept of that Gamzula Teva and the different Lashenas that ever brings the Chassidus, explaining the Gemaras on this topic. So here again, he took a very basic theme, nothing like some type of new mimer that you didn't never heard before, but explained it in a way that can be practically applied. And here again, as I said, the judges judge blindly. They took a paper and they just dissected it in the different components, the truth to the original, the application, how much of the Chassidus is understood, how much is it, how creative it was, and so on. This was number 2. Number 3 and number 4, which were tied, exactly tied, were one about the Chassidic approach to overeating. I actually found that quite entertaining in a way, but of course based on Chassidus here too. And here Rivka Johnson, what she did was she took the elements of basically consciousness about your eating, where because eating is in Yiddishkeit, the Chassidus is an Aveda. It's not just you eat in order to sustain yourself. It itself is an Aveda. The awareness of what you're eating, the bracha you make, the kavanas you make, the nitzur, the spark within it. And she applied that to a sensitivity of how you eat. If you eat a chassidish way, it will definitely affect you in how you overeating and focusing, instead of seeing eating as just some type of passive activity. And here too, you saw a combination of the elements taking some chassidish sources. Here, for example, it would have been stronger if there were more sources. There's no question the paper would have done better. Yet the sources that were used were explained well and applied. And again, I'm not going to go into the details because it's not, I think, healthy to go into every, I didn't ask every judge to give me an analysis of every paper. We took their marks and we respect those marks. But am I reading it? I'm just saying things that could have perhaps been made even better. I'm pointing out the things like that. But the strengths of it is, again, relevant, very creative. You see, you wouldn't think. You'd learn a mimer about food, Meitzah Pi Hashem. Would you recognize that's something you can apply to a real life situation? That match of taking a Chassidish and applying it to a real life challenge, even if it's not always easy to follow, but it's practical and someone can listen to it, and if they listen, it'll help them. It was a key to this winning essay. And finally, there was the fourth, which was just tied for third, was Minna Gordon, and she wrote about, in a personal way, about her experience, but essentially it comes down to applying Kuntres Ahavas Yisroel in a way that is viable. Now, we all talk about Ahavas Yisroel. So this paper was a little challenging, because Ahavas Yisroel, what are you going to say that is original, that's applicable? But what she did was, very practically, was shown the different aspects of Ahavas Yisroel in a numbered way, the unconditional love, and how it affects us. Basically, how Ahavas Yisroel makes you a better person, a healthier person, both in your relationship to God and your relationship to each other. And did it in a very methodical way. Here too, well annotated, many sources. Many sources got some extra points because of what we spoke about cross-referencing, but was focused primarily on the Rebbe's Kuntres Ahavas Yisroel, where he brings, obviously, from Derech Mitzvah and from Likutei Torah, and from Eira Torah, and from many other places, and also focused on different aspects of how we look at each other, how we see, how we reflect it in each other, and overall, a very practical application in how, when you look at somebody and you have a certain reaction, your neighbor is blocking your driveway, she writes, and you consider calling a tow truck at his expense. What should be your reaction? So it gave real life scenarios where you could apply these ideas. And I want to reiterate again, the point here is not to compare this to another paper. Every paper had its quality. That was the quality in this paper. And again, I encourage you all to read them all. These 4 have been posted. This coming week will be another one posted before Pesach, and then every week yet another, and I will continue this discussion and so on. Now, let us, with the time remaining, I will, let's see, did I cover? Yeah. Let's cover a few more items. And I say again to the contestants, to all of you, thank you for participating. You're all winners from my point of view. The papers are really, really interesting, fascinating, and I'm sure many of them will elicit. I already know some people who've read the papers are already thinking of ideas. I know a professor who read one and asked me how that can be implemented into a psychological model. So I am sure that many different immediate and sometimes long-term fruit will emerge from all of it. For the winners of the prizes, again, If you haven't heard from us, you will hear from us shortly, so don't worry about that, and we will try to accommodate and send you your awards as soon as possible. We also plan to do a more formal event, and we'll keep you posted about that as well. Again, we welcome all your ideas, and you could submit them either anonymously or write to us directly at meaningfullife.com. Contact us, meaningfullife.com/mylife is where you can also submit questions and any other things you may want to send us to that forum. Okay, let's go to the next question, and that is dreams. Should we interpret dreams? As usual, I'm confused here with my own notes. I'm not even sure what I have here, what I don't have. Okay. Just bear with me, please. Okay, should we be interpreting dreams? So let me read a few questions that came our way. Oh, here's what I was looking for. Question 1, should we believe in bad dreams if it occurs twice in two different situations? I recently had two separate dreams about one specific friend of mine, and they weren't good ones. In both, they were injured in some way, and the thought frightened me. I called them up a day after, and my feelings were confirmed that they had been injured but were okay. They were simply shocked as to how I was able to dream about it. They were situated on the other side of the world with a different time zone. I would like to know how to deal with this situation if it occurs again, and if I should repeat it to the person or not. What does the Rebbe say on this matter as well? Question 2. What does Chassidus say about dreams? What exactly happens when you're sleeping? Do bad, evil dreams say anything about who you are? Thank you so much for everything. Question number 3. I have many vivid dreams which I jot down first thing in the morning before the details fade. There are many books written on dream interpretations, many even from Jewish sources. Did the Rebbe ever speak about interpreting dreams? I know we don't want to give bad ones power by fueling it, but what about good dreams? Should we share them with loved ones, or better never to speak about it? During Pesach, another question. During Pesach davening, we are going to say Birchas Kohanim and nullify our bad dreams. What's the relationship between the Kohen blessing the people and using that as an opportunity to speak about nightmares? Seems strange. Okay, very good questions. And I'll just say overall, and then we'll talk about some details. B'chlal, the Rebbe's approach, and that is to me the main approach to take here, especially in our time, is to ignore as much as possible dreams. The Rebbe once told someone in Yechidus who asked the Rebbe about dreams to interpret dreams, and clearly we find dreams in the Torah. Yosef had dreams, Pari had dreams, dreams that Yaakov had a dream, etc. Zohar talks about interpreting the dreams in other places, the Gemara and Brachas, many places where dreams are interpreted. So the concept is definitely a real one, and yet in our times the Rebbe tries to minimize it, and I'll soon quote some sources for that. And essentially, as he told someone in Yechidus who talked to him about dreams, the Rebbe said, first let's figure out what we're doing when we're awake before we get to what we're doing when we're asleep in dreams. Which means, if your life is completely controlled, where all day you're involved in good things, and in Kedusha, and Yiras Shamayim, and Torah, and Mitzvahs, and then you have dream, it's one thing. If your day, which is far more in your control, is not necessarily on that level, to start focusing on dreams can be a little sensationalism, escapism, and avoiding real life, which ultimately comes down to personal responsibility. There's, of course, the famous Gemara in Brachas, that you dream at night what you think about by day. So the first solution to most dreams is simply to think about the right things, so you don't dream about the wrong things. And yet to say that dreams are meaningless, obviously not. So overall, the Rebbe's approach is hes chadas, to move away from it. Even if you had a dream, even if it's a dream that's very vivid, who says you have to react to it? There's a Gemara that says, also I believe in Brachas, that says, Hakal helech achara pisrin, that a dream is an amorphous state, and it always goes according to the interpretation. So if you don't interpret it, that's it, it's over with. You don't need to necessarily concretize it and make it into a tzimis or a tumul. So to speak a little more detailed about it, let me address it from a few aspects. First of all, it says on one hand, the Gemara says, Ein cholam b'lei dvarim b'teilin. There's no dream without foolishness. Dvarim b'teilin, meaningless things. On the other hand, it says that dream can be a mini nevuah, a mini prophecy. The problem is it's all snowballed together. And you don't know which is Devon B'Tail and which is not. Which is one of the reasons, Anoshim Karkenu, people like us, stay away from this. You don't need to go there. Eibishter wants to get a message to you, he'll get the message to you. That's overall. Most of dreams, therefore, today are not messages from God. They're recycled of what we've been thinking by day, like I said from the Gemara. A person is stressed out. Different things happen to you. So obviously it's possible that you're going to have a negative dream. As I said, we dream what we think about. So think better things, you'll have better dreams. So to say this is some type of like nevuah that the Eibishter sent to Pari, or to Yosef in his dreams, or to Yaakov, or to Avram Avinu, and the hundreds of different incidents, Daniel and so on, is not necessarily what we have to look at as a vision. Simply straighten out your life by day and you'll have less negative dreams. So, okay. In the Rebbe's quotes, let me just quote you a few sources so you'll see this inside yourself. The Rebbe in general, people who wrote to the Rebbe about bad dreams and they were disturbed, the Rebbe's answer was that unless a person is of a particular high level of Yiras Shamayim, piety, they're not messages. And there's no reason to be concerned. I'll just quote you some sources for this. Igris Kedesh, volume 7, pages 290 and 291, the Rebbe speaks about it. If indeed a person is nervous, so there's a letter in volume 16 of Igris Kedesh, page 65, where the Rebbe says, so interpret it positively based on the Gemara that I said, by interpreting it, that's how it follows. So just find a way to interpret positively. If you can't find a way, ask somebody else. The Rebbe also says, if you have dreams that disturb you, sometimes the Rebbe says to give tzedakah. That's in Igris Kedesh, volume 20, page 62. Check tefillin and mezuzahs to ensure they're kosher. That is in Igris Kedesh, volume 15, page 277. And in general, strengthening amunah in Hashem, faith, and kiyum Torah and mitzvahs. And that is in volume 20, page 203, Igris Kedesh. Yeah. So overall, it's basically responsibility for your life. Now, this person who wrote about the double dream that comes twice, yes, a dream happens more than once, it's probably going to be more concerning, but the same ideas apply. You have to fill your life with Kedusha. I see so many people talk to me about dreams and other types of the mysterious worlds of exotic, and they don't have their life together. I'm not suggesting the questioners here are this situation. And you don't have your life together when you're awake. What are you talking about dreams? It seems a form of escapism. It seems a form of like finding some type of panacea. People deal more with reincarnation. Figure out your life here. And I don't mean to be dismissive. It's just a matter of being realistic, practical, and grounded. And if you have that, and a dream continues to come back, and the Eibishter Dafka wants you to get a message across, he'll get it over to you. There's no question about it. As we know stories, even from the Tzemach Tzedek and others, who ignored the first time a dream, and then the message got to them. But B'derech Klal, we would say that the Rebbe's Eibishter's messages come to us probably not through dreams, but more when we're awake, through Hashgacha Pratis, through divine providence. And that's what we should be focusing on. Now, you could say, what about in the halachas? We have Tainis Cholim, you have Hatovas Cholim, you have a whole bunch of things in Shulchan Aruch, that in Gemara that talk about. So, again, based on the Rebbe's Eiros today, for most people, they don't necessarily applicable. If after everything I've said, someone still can't get beyond it, then maybe the solution is to go to a Rav, or to go to a Bezdin, or to go to some friends and do what it says in Shulchan Aruch, if that's going to actually help. But it could just be a psychological need to be able to get beyond it. But overall, if a person really wants to listen to the Rebbe's Eiros, and you don't need weiter. If that's not enough for you, then it's due to our own Schwachkeiten. So be it. We don't have to be Mahader. Tainis Cholim is not the first mitzvah to be Mahader, in Yiddishkeit. There are many, many others that have come before it. And as I said again, getting your life together. And above all, as I said before, have a mashpia. Have someone to talk to. Someone that you can present what happened to you, your dreams, and let them help you either get through it or ignore it or move on and so on. They tell the joke of this guy that was having these horrible nightmares that under his bed there are all kinds of demons. And he went to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist took top dollar and sitting with him, and he's going through his childhood and his experiences and his marriage and this and all the usual suspects, every possible reason that he should be having these nightmares at night. And after a few months, this guy's paying a lot of money for psychotherapy. One day he goes to his Rav and tells the Rav what's going on. The Rav said to him, a solution. After that, all the nightmares went away. So he stopped going back to the psychiatrist. The psychiatrist meets him one day or sends him a letter and says, what happened to you? He had a good income from this guy. He probably saw that he could make a lot of money from him. The nightmares weren't going away. He says, my rabbi gave me a simple solution and that was it. What was the solution? He said, he told me to cut off the legs of my bed. So there's nothing under the bed anymore. So there can't be any demons there, any animal. So sometimes it comes down to a practical thing instead of trying to look deeper in all kinds of different interpretations in what the chalemis and dreams that a person may have. Just as an aside. There's also a story since L'chvivusa de Milsa, I'll tell the Rebbe Rashab, Beis Nissan, the Rebbe Rashab's yahrzeit, that Beis Nissan, that the Rebbe Rashab, there was a Chassidic shepherd who thought he was a Baal Madrega. So he kept going to the Rebbe Rashab. He wanted to become a rebel in his community. And he thought of the Rebbe Rashab, his maskim, he can go back to the Chassidim and say, hey, he has Askama from the big Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab ignored him until one day he finally, he couldn't get the Rebbe Rashab's Askama. So he said to the Rebbe Rashab that he had a dream. His father came to him and told him he should become the Rebbe of these Chassidim. So finally the Rebbe Rashab saw he has no way to get rid of this guy. So he says to him, next time your father comes to you in the dream, tell him you should appear in the dream to the Chassidim. And tell them that they should take you. So this is a little Chassidish anecdotes to lighten the mood with the dreams. But again, I think I covered it from the different directions and angles. If people want more about this, please follow up with your questions. But above all, do not become consumed with anything. There's an Eibishter, there's Ashgacha Pratis. We believe that everything is good. Trag Gut V'Zayin Gut applies to this as well. Just because you have a negative dream, that does not mean you have to dwell on it. Think good, find a way to interpret it. Just like Rashbi found a way to interpret that the brachas, that what Rabbi Lazar, his son, thought were curses, that really were brachas, as the Gemara says in Ma'it Kot. So that's with the dreams. As far as Birchas Keinim goes, the Rebbe does refer to Birchas Keinim. The Birchas Keinim already gives you the koyach that dreams already should be nesapach, should be transformed, as we say. Why Birchas Keinim? I once heard the Taich, I'm not sure what the source is. Birchas Keinim, as you know, it combines the quality of both tefillah and a bracha. Chassidus says that a bracha, hamavrich, draws down that which you already have earned. So a bracha opens up the channels. Tefillah is Yehi Ratzon, can actually create a new Ratzon, even something that was not part of your destiny. Ephraim and Menashe, Yaakov did not. Why didn't he just give Menashe the bracha? Because it belonged to Ephraim, and Yaakov was giving a bracha, not a tefillah. So he draws down what was shaykh to Ephraim. But then there's a tefillah where you ask for a prayer that even though I may not be worthy, or even though the destiny may be one way, Yehi Ratzon, God's Ratzon should change. So the Mila of Chassidus says the Mila of a bracha is that it's far more guaranteed because it's already yours, it's only locked, it's sealed, so you need to open up the door. Tefillah is not assured because it's a new Ratzon, a new destiny. On the other hand, Tefillah can create something completely new, and bracha can only give you that which is already in your Seder Shemakir. Birchas Keinim, Chassidus says, Ad Meheri Yored Dvorei has both milas. On one hand, it's Birchas Keinim, it's a bracha, but it's also a tefillah. Because the Kahanim, like an express train, can go into places in Keser, in the Ratzon, create a Ratzon Chodesh, and it should be assured just like it is a bracha. Since dreams come from the unconscious, come from a place that is not conscious, a Kohen in Birchas Keinim is able to bridge the unconscious and the conscious, and able to also purify and sweeten anything that may be negative. So time of Birchas Keinim is as gula, is an appropriate time, an opportune time to create the ability to interpret and to make sure that dreams should not have any negative impact, only positive one. But this again, you can rely on the brachas, say the tefillas, Pesach when there's Birchas Keinim, and that can help the whole situation. Okay, let's see what else we can cover here. Learning challenges in daily study portions. This is a question. Let me read it. A few minutes left, we'll cover this. I feel like there's so many things to learn, namely Shulchan Aruch, Rebbe's Mamorim, Chassidish Parsha, Seder, Masechta Seder, the Eimer, because it has 49 pages. 19th of Kislev, Masechta, the Masechta of Sima Shas, Sichas Chassidish magazines, but I just simply don't have the time. I know what you didn't mention Chitas in here, but you could throw that in also, and Rambam, of course. Oh, he writes, I didn't mention chitas and 3 prakim Rambam because that's a given. That I don't put my head on the pillow till I finish it. I'm a shliach, have a wife with 5 kids. Any ideas? Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. So that's a given, that's for sure he does. The question is more than that. Okay, good question. Question 2, chitas Rambam frustration. Baruch Hashem, 98% of the time I don't miss chitas and 3 prakim Rambam. I know the Rebbe had a special chavivus to dafka the 3 prakim, 3 chapters a day. Yet at times I get extremely frustrated by my lack of understanding many complex Rashis, and even more with many extremely complex chapters of Rambam. I strongly believe that the source for brachas of nachas, health, and wealth come directly from doing chitas, that's Chumash Tilim Tanya, and 3 chapters Rambam. But I need your help with overcoming my extreme frustration. I simply don't have time to listen to online shiurim. Well, since you're waiting for my answer, I assume you're listening to this one at least. Question number 3. Where should one focus one's learning energies when becoming a Chabad? I grew up religious but not Chassidish. Okay, fine. Very practical questions, so let me just say a few things that are from the Rebbe's letters and Heiraz that I've heard. I can't give you a source right now. This is more from memory, things I picked up along the way. If anyone has specific sources, please send them to us at meaningfullife.com/mylife. But I will say the following. First of all, remember, frustration and negative thoughts generally are part of the Yetzer Hara's ability to weaken us. So we all have to find ways and not allow negative feelings, something you haven't accomplished, or guilt, or other things to weigh you down. It's to be a positive approach. I commend people who are learning it, consistently see it as a source of bracha. The Rebbe emphasizes so often that we are not asked to do something we don't have the ability to do. Now, of course, the question is how much kamus, how much echus. We could obviously learn a lot more if we don't understand every word or in depth. On the other hand, there's a quality to understand something in echus, to understand it qualitatively. I think case by case, I would recommend to every person to sit down with someone that you trust, review your shiurim, review your time schedules, and someone can help you sort through and see what should you learn quicker, like more bekiyas, more and what more liyun, and what more legirs, and what more liyun. What means reading it quicker, and what to learn more. Maybe even 3 prakim, you don't have to learn every halacha the same year. You could take 1 halacha each day, and give a little more time to it. It all comes down to getting control of your life. It's like anything in life, time management, focusing, and so on. If you really care, when the questions definitely indicate that, there are ways to do it. It's hard sometimes to determine it yourself. It's hard to make your own schedules. That's why I'm suggesting talking to somebody. But do not feel frustrated. That's not the way to go. We have to do what we can do. There's a lot to learn. Chitas, Rambam, and we add the other things that were mentioned, even more so. Another thing, there are things that were chiyuvim, like Rambam and Chitas. There are things that b'mokim shali bechofetz, which mimer to learn, for example. If you're going to learn Masechta Seder, should you learn that? Should you take a different shir? So there's the general hira from Chazal that Rebbe cites so often that you should begin learning b'mokim shali bechofetz, where your heart desires. Because when your heart cares and is passionate about something, much more likely you'll stick with it. You know, I don't know if this comes across right, but my line that I would use for this, if your nefesh habamis likes what you're doing, you're generally in better shape. Because your nefesh habamis has an opinion and a daya that usually affects us. So try to find things that your nefesh habamis enjoys. What I mean enjoy, something you either enjoy learning or something you need to prepare for a class, or in some way something that, the Chassidus Applied essay to win $10,000. Who knows what it is? It doesn't matter if it's Shalei L'Shma, Bo L'Shma. Mokim Shali B'Chofetz makes you far more invested. So I think it's really about, it's essentially an accounting, a type of soul searching and accounting, a cheshbon hanefesh, what you're learning, what you want to learn, what your time is like, what the frustrations are. And I think when you start sorting it out, you get clarity. Frustration happens when it gets overwhelming and there's so much and you just don't know where to begin, where to end. There's Shabbos, Yom Tov coming now. There's ways to schedule time there. Some of us are more disciplined. Some of us are night people. Some of us are day people. And I've seen different solutions for different people. I do not think one size fits all. Everyone has their time. There are times where you have more downtime and you don't have that much bed space. So maybe it's time to do shiurim that you're doing more legirsa. Chaz v'shalom, I'm not suggesting that you're doing it in any frivolous or dismissive way. But these are all balanced things that we can all find ways to balance. It's just a matter of prioritizing and getting the help to organize. That's my general response to this. With this, we will sum up and conclude. I want to conclude where I began. Yud Aleph Nissan coming up. Everyone should have a lichtik Yud Aleph Nissan. I quoted the Sikha from Yud Aleph Nissan Tov Shemem Hey. I should quote as well the Sikha of Purim Tov Shemem Gimel, where the Rebbe also talks about briefly. He asks a question about himself. From Zeit to Zeit, Hopna Shayla Vim Zoltan, Daf Man Gain Some Rebbe. And the Rebbe was saying, that he's matriach people, similar to Yud Aleph Nissan Mem Hey, but a different signin. That getting people to come, maybe they should all stay home and learn. Why are they all coming to Fabrengen? And the Rebbe brought the famous story with the Alter Rebbe, where he saw the Chassidim once coming to see him, and he said to the Rebbetzin, "Why are they coming? What's kommen sie? What's willen sie from me? What do they want from me?" And the Rebbe's words were, the Rebbetzin saw that she has to do something quickly to make sure there's a good ending, a happy ending. So she told the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, "They kommen hören, was euer Rebbe hat zu sagen." They're coming to hear what your Rebbe has to say. When the Alter Rebbe heard that, he says, "Eba zeh will ich sagen und sagen." I'll say and say. And the Rebbe took from that the lesson. He says, the Alter Rebbe said it, Mitzad Anivis. He also wrote in Tanya, as Mipi Sofrim, Mipi Seifrim, Kavyochel. But the Rebbe was talking about himself in the context, Hashgacha Pratis, as a Zog was the Rebbe gesagt. All the Rabbeim seem to have had the similar humility, and they kept saying that they're the ones that are only humble, and the other one really were that way. But listen, all the Rabbeim are the same Madrege. One Moyer, there's no Shalshalis in the Moyer, only in the Oyer. And it's clearly that the Rebbe there, the similar theme to Yud Aleph Nissan Mem Hey, the theme that a Rebbe is nicht a Yochid. He's not an individual. He's here to tell us Zogen und Zogen. And nobody can accuse the Rebbe of not Zogen. The Rebbe spoke more than any Rebbe, maybe any Rebbe in history. The amount of material we have, the sichos, yam, mamash yam, on audio, on video, and text, of course, reading. So there's no excuse not to read something in Aleph Nissan and be dedicated. And you'll be amazed. The more you read, the more you find new things. I've been doing this so much part of my life, I can tell you I continuously find and amazed by all kinds of interesting, intriguing insights, things that you missed the first time, and so on. So it's beautiful to see these sichos. They're not meant, on the contrary, they teach us a little going into the Rebbe's mind, Kavyochel. Via zet a Rebbe. A Rebbe is nicht kein Yochid. He is the Tnu, it's the whole movement, it's the Teire. It's on the Farvet Zogen and Zogen, not because he has something to say, it's because Zog was gehört from Zaydem, all the way, as the Rebbe says in one Sikha, to Moshe Rabbeinu, all the way to Atzmus Ein Sof. Everyone should have a lichtik Yud Aleph Nissan, a kosher and Freilich and Pesach. As I said, next week's episode is going to be Yontif, so next week is going to be Yontif, so therefore there will be no episode. I should correct myself. The following week will most likely be the next one, which will be Isra Chag. Everyone, again, a very, very kosher and Freilich and Pesach with a Freilich Yud Aleph Nissan Achona. This has been My Life, Chassidus Applied, episode 62.